We were married. Legally. I wore a suit, she wore white. The monks chanted in that ancient way that makes your chest vibrate, and I sat there cross-legged on the temple floor thinking this was it. This was my second chance. Her name was Nanika, and when she whispered, "You're my only one," during the ceremony, I believed her with every broken piece of my heart. I was 57 years old, fresh from a divorce that lasted longer than some people's entire careers, and I thought I'd found something real in Thailand. Something pure. I was wrong about everything. The temple smelled like jasmine and incense, and her family sat in neat rows behind us, all smiles and gentle nods. "Vincent," she said, squeezing my hand as the head monk tied the white cord around our wrists, "I will take care of you forever. Forever." That word hung in the humid air like a promise I desperately needed to believe. My ex-wife back in Kansas City had said similar things once, 28 years ago, before lawyers and custody battles and the slow death of everything we'd built. But this felt different. Nanika felt different. She was 40, calm, traditional. She knew about loss. She understood what it meant to start over. This story came rushing back to me after I got an email from someone who's been quietly watching this channel for over a year. He said he'd also married in a Thai temple. Different town, different woman, but the same feeling. He ended his message with this. It felt sacred. Like maybe love could actually begin again in a place that old. I wanted to believe it so badly. That line stopped me. I just stared at it. First came the ache in my throat, then the heat behind my eyes. And then that hollow silence, the one you feel when someone puts into words the thing you've been too ashamed to say aloud. I wasn't in love. I was in mourning, and I mistook her kindness for rescue. If you've been through something similar, you're not alone. Leave a comment and tell me where you're watching from. Like, subscribe, share your story. This channel isn't just about my regrets, it's about all of us figuring this out together. And to everyone who keeps coming back, week after week, thank you. Truly. You've turned this channel into something far more personal than I ever expected, and I don't take a second of it for granted. Alright, let me take you back to where it all started. Do you feel peaceful? She asked as we walked out of the temple, her white silk dress catching the afternoon light. I nodded because I did feel peaceful. For the first time in 3 years, I felt like I belonged somewhere. The Buddhist ceremony wasn't legally binding, but we'd already signed the papers at the district office. She was officially my wife. I was officially hers. This is how marriage should be, I told her, and she smiled that quiet smile I'd fallen in love with. No stress, no fighting, just partnership. She nodded and said, "Yes, Vincent, just partnership." But partnerships require trust, and trust requires honesty, and I was about to learn that some people see honesty as weakness. Some people see trust as opportunity. I just didn't know it yet. Walking away from that temple, holding her hand, I thought I was walking toward my future. I had no idea I was walking toward the most expensive lesson of my life. We met in the most mundane place possible. The immigration office in Chiang Mai, where every retired expat goes to extend their visa and pretend they're not slowly going insane from bureaucracy. I'd been living in Thailand for 8 months, renting a small apartment near the old city, eating street food, learning basic Thai phrases, and generally trying to figure out who I was now that I wasn't anybody's husband anymore. The visa renewal process was a nightmare of forms and photos and bank statements, and I was sitting there feeling completely lost when she approached me. "Excuse me," she said in careful English. "You need help?" She worked at a small visa agency across the street, wore a crisp white blouse and navy skirt, had her hair pulled back in a professional bun. Nothing flashy, nothing desperate. Just a woman offering assistance to a confused foreigner. "I see you with the forms. Very complicated, yes?" I laughed and said yes, very complicated. She offered to help for a small fee, and I said yes to that too. Her name was Nanika, and she made the whole process feel manageable. We sat in her small office while she organized my paperwork, and she offered me tea while we waited for the copy machine to warm up. "You live here long time?" she asked, and I found myself telling her about the divorce, about needing a change, about choosing Thailand because it seemed peaceful. "I understand," she said quietly. "I lose my husband 2 years ago. Cancer. Sometimes we need new place for healing." The way she said it, so matter-of-fact but gentle, Made me realize I wasn't the only one carrying wounds. You have children? I asked, and she shook her head. We try many years, but... She shrugged with the kind of resignation that comes from genuine grief. Maybe not meant to be. I told her about my grown kids back home, how they barely spoke to me after the divorce, how starting over at 57 felt impossible some days. Not impossible, she said, stamping one of my forms with decisive authority. Just different timeline. A week later, she called to tell me my visa was approved. I thanked her and was about to hang up when she said, "Vincent, there is Temple Fair this weekend. Very traditional, very beautiful. You want to see real Thai culture?" I said yes, without thinking. Why not? I'd been eating alone and watching Netflix alone and walking alone for months. A temple fair sounded perfect. The fair was everything she promised. Food stalls and traditional music and families laughing together under strings of colored lights. We walked side by side, not quite together but not quite apart, sharing pad thai from a paper plate. "This is where I grew up," she said, pointing to a cluster of wooden houses beyond the temple grounds. Very simple life, but happy life. She talked about her parents, both dead now, about learning English from tourists, about working hard to build something stable. No drama, no demands. Just a woman who understood that peace was more valuable than passion. "I like this," I told her as we sat on a bench watching children run around the temple courtyard. No pressure, no games, just easy. She nodded and said, "Yes, easy is good. I think Western people make everything too complicated." She wasn't wrong. My marriage back home had been exhausting. Everything was a negotiation, a battle, a test. With Nanika, conversation flowed like water, natural, unforced. "Maybe we can do this again?" I said when she dropped me off at my apartment that night. "I would like that," she replied, and the way she said it made me believe she meant it. No games, no manipulation, just two adults who'd found each other at exactly the right moment. Moving in together felt inevitable. After 2 months of dinners and temple visits and long conversations about life and loss, she mentioned that her lease was ending. "I need to find new place," she said over coffee one morning. "Maybe we..." She paused, looking suddenly shy. "Maybe we try living together? See if we fit?" I'd been thinking the same thing. My apartment was too small, but together we could afford something nice, something that felt like a home instead of just a place to sleep. "I'd like that," I said, and her face lit up with genuine happiness. "Really? You sure?" I was sure. For the first time since my divorce, I was sure about something. We found a house in the suburbs. Nothing fancy but clean and quiet with a small garden where she could grow herbs. 2 bedrooms, one for us and one for an office. "Perfect," she said as we signed the lease. "This feels like home." The practical arrangements came next, and she handled them with the same gentle efficiency she'd shown at the visa office. "Vincent," she said a few days after we'd moved in, "maybe we open joint account? For house expenses, utilities, food?" It made sense. She was better at dealing with Thai banks and bills, and I was tired of trying to navigate the language barrier every time I needed to pay for something. "Easier for me to take care of everything," she explained. "You just relax, enjoy retirement." I transferred $40,000 from my U.S. account to our new joint account at Capricorn Bank, my emergency fund, money I'd saved over years of working construction sites in Kansas City, money that represented security and independence. "This is good start," she said, kissing my cheek as we left the bank. "Now I can take proper care of you." The phrase should have felt romantic. Instead, it felt like relief. After 28 years of fighting over every expense, every purchase, every financial decision, the idea of letting someone else handle the details felt like freedom. "You don't have to work so hard anymore," she said that evening as I helped her organize receipts at the kitchen table. "I handle everything: bills, food, house maintenance. You just live peaceful life." I watched her sort through utility bills and grocery receipts with methodical precision, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Trust. Complete, uncomplicated trust. "This is how it should be," I told her, and she nodded. "Yes, this is how marriage works. Partnership. You provide security, I provide care." She made it sound so simple, so balanced. I had the money, she had the local knowledge. I had the retirement income, she had the time and energy to manage our daily life. Perfect partnership. But perfect partnerships don't require constant trips to family emergencies. Nanika's trips to her mother's village started a month after we opened the joint account. Mama is sick, she explained, packing a small overnight bag. I need to help with medicine. Maybe some repair for roof. She'd be gone for 3 or 4 days at a time, and I'd stay home, reading books and walking through the neighborhood markets, learning to be comfortable alone again. How much do these trips cost? I asked one evening after she returned from her 3rd village visit in 2 weeks. She looked tired, stressed. Not too much, she said. Maybe 5,000–6,000 baht. Medicine is expensive, and roof need new tile. That was about $150. Not unreasonable for family medical bills. If you need more, just let me know, I offered. Family comes first. She smiled and said, "Thank you, Vincent. You have good heart." But the trips were becoming more frequent. Every week, sometimes twice a week. Always urgent. Always expensive. Her cousin needed money for university. Her aunt needed dental work. The village temple needed repairs. "I'm sorry," she'd say each time. "I know it's difficult, but family very important in Thai culture." I understood family obligations. I'd been sending money to my own kids for years, even after they stopped calling. But Nanika's family seemed to have an endless stream of emergencies. "Maybe I should come with you sometime," I suggested, after she'd been gone for 4 days helping her uncle with some kind of business problem. "Meet your family properly." "Oh no," she said quickly. "Village very traditional. Not appropriate for farang to stay in family house. Better I go alone, handle everything, then come back to you." It made sense, culturally. I didn't want to impose on traditions I didn't understand. But it was hard, being left behind every week while she dealt with crisis after crisis that always seemed to require cash. "How much did we spend on family this month?" I asked one evening, looking at our bank statement. The withdrawals were adding up. 10,000 baht here, 15,000 there. "Not too much?" she said, taking the statement from my hands. "I keep track of everything, don't worry." But I was starting to worry. Not about the money exactly, but about the pattern. Every conversation about family ended the same way. She needed cash. I gave it to her. She left for a few days and came back tired and vague about details. "Vincent," she said one night as we lay in bed, "I think maybe my family take advantage a little bit. Always asking for money." I felt a surge of relief. Finally, she was seeing what I was seeing. Maybe I need to be more strong. Say no sometimes. I squeezed her hand and said, "It's okay to set boundaries, even with family." She nodded and said, "Yes, boundaries are important. I will be more careful." But the trips continued. The emergencies continued. And our joint account balance continued to drop, steady as rain. I found the paperwork by accident. Nanika had gone to her mother's village again, some crisis with her nephew's school fees, and I needed to find our internet bill to call customer service. Her desk drawer was usually off limits, but I figured it was just paperwork. Bills and receipts and visa documents. Nothing personal. I was wrong. The first thing I saw was a real estate contract. A condo purchase agreement for a property in Bangkok. 2 bedrooms, modern building, city center location. Purchase price, 800,000 baht. About $24,000. The buyer name was listed as Nanika Sukhothai and Sudat Charoensuk. I stared at the paper for a full minute, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. We lived in Chiang Mai. We'd never talked about Bangkok real estate. And who the hell was Sutat Charoensuk? Under the real estate contract were bank transfer receipts. Monthly transfers from our joint account to something called Bangkok Condo Management. 40,000 baht per month for the past 6 months. Nearly $1,200 a month for a property I'd never heard of, co-owned by someone whose name I'd never heard. I felt physically sick. There were more papers. University tuition payments for someone named Ploy Charoensuk. Medical bills for Mali Charoensuk. Insurance payments for Sutat Charoensuk vehicle registration. A whole family of Charoensuk expenses, all paid from our joint account, all signed off by Nanika. None of it matched the stories she'd been telling me about village emergencies and temple repairs. When she came home 3 days later, I was sitting at the kitchen table with the papers spread out in front of me. She walked in carrying her overnight bag and stopped cold when she saw what I was looking at. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she sat down across from me and folded her hands in her lap. "Vincent," she said quietly, "I can explain everything." I picked up the real estate contract and held it toward her. "Who is Sutat Charwensuk?" I asked. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. She looked at the paper and then at me, and for the first time since I'd known her, she looked genuinely afraid. "He is my cousin," she said. "Family business. We buy condo together for investment." I set the contract down and picked up one of the university receipts. "Employ Charwensuk? Another cousin?" She nodded quickly. "Yes, cousin daughter. Very smart girl. Need help with education. The medical bills. The insurance payments. The monthly management fees. All cousins, all legitimate, all family business I apparently wasn't supposed to know about." "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. "Why all the stories about your mother's village and temple repairs?" She started crying then, not the gentle tears I'd seen when she talked about her late husband, but desperate, panicked, sobbing. "I'm sorry, Vincent. I'm so sorry. I know I should tell you truth, but I scared you get angry, maybe leave me." "Angry about what? Helping your family? I told you I understood about family obligations." She wiped her eyes and looked at me with something that might have been hope. "Really? You not angry?" I wasn't angry. I was confused and hurt and feeling stupid for not asking more questions, but I wasn't angry. "I just wish you'd been honest," I said. "We're supposed to be partners." She nodded eagerly. "Yes, partners. That why I want to invest money smart way. Condo in Bangkok, good location, price go up every year. Better than keeping money in low interest account." She was right about that. Thai bank accounts paid almost nothing in interest. Real estate could be a smart investment. "Employ really is very smart," she continued. "Top student, study engineering. When she graduate, she get good job, pay back everything." I wanted to believe her. God help me. I wanted to believe her so badly that I ignored every red flag, every inconsistency, every voice in my head telling me that something wasn't right. "Next time," I said, "just tell me the truth. We can make these decisions together." She promised she would. She promised no more secrets, no more village emergency stories, no more mystery expenses. She promised to treat me like a real partner, instead of just a source of funds. For 2 weeks, things seemed normal. She showed me Bangkok real estate listings, explaining how property values were rising in certain neighborhoods. She brought home university brochures, showing me Ploy's academic achievements and course requirements. She even video called with cousin Sutat, introducing me as her husband, letting me see that he was a real person with a real job who really did co-own the Bangkok condo. But the trips to her family village continued, and the money kept flowing out of our account, and I kept finding new receipts for expenses that didn't match the stories she told me. The warning came from someone I barely knew. Jim Morrison, not the dead rock star but a 62-year-old retired mechanic from Ohio who'd been living in Chiang Mai for 5 years. I'd met him at a bar near the Sunday market, one of those conversations that happen between expats when you're both drinking alone and need someone to complain to about visa requirements and the weather. "You married to a Thai girl?" he asked after I mentioned Nanika. "Thai-American agency worker near immigration," I said. "Nanika Sukhothai." His face changed. Not dramatic, just a slight tightening around the eyes. "Nanika?" he said. "Tall, maybe 40 years old, works at that little visa place on Ratchadamnoan." I nodded, suddenly alert. "You know her?" "Know of her," he said carefully. "Friend of mine married her sister few years back. Or maybe cousin. Hard to keep track." He took a long drink of his beer. "She help you with visa stuff?" I nodded again. "She helped you with money stuff too?" The question hit like a cold wave. "What do you mean?" Jim sighed and looked around the bar like he was checking for eavesdroppers. "Look, I don't want to cause problems between you and your wife. But my friend Rick, he went through something similar. Visa help turned into relationship turned into joint bank accounts turned into family emergencies every week." He paused. "Rick lost about $60,000 before he figured out what was happening." "What was happening?" I asked, though I was starting to understand. Jim finished his beer and stood up to leave. She's got a system, man. Targets recently divorced Western guys, helps with visa stuff to build trust, then moves in fast and starts the family emergency routine. Always urgent, always cash, always just enough that you don't think it's worth fighting about. He put his hand on my shoulder. How much you transferred into joint accounts? I didn't answer. I couldn't answer. The number was too embarrassing, too huge, too devastating to say out loud. Jim nodded like my silence told him everything he needed to know. Rick's back in Ohio now, he said, broke and bitter. Don't be Rick. The next morning, I went to immigration by myself. Not to Nanika's agency, but to the main government office where actual officials processed actual visa applications. I waited in line for 2 hours to speak to a clerk who barely spoke English, but I had to know. I had to ask. Nanika Sukhothai, I said, showing him her business card. She work here? The clerk looked at the card and shook his head. No work here. She have agency, help people with documents, but not government worker. That much I already knew. But then I asked the question that had been eating at me since my conversation with Jim. How many Western men she help with visa? How many she marry? The clerk looked around nervously, then leaned closer to the window. I not supposed to talk about this, he said quietly, but you seem like good man. She help many farang, many marriage. Some men very angry when they find out about money. He paused. You have problem with money? I thanked him and left without answering. But I had my answer. I wasn't special. I wasn't her second chance at love after a tragic loss. I was a pattern, a type, a target. The final confirmation came 3 days later when I checked our bank account online. The balance showed 847 Thai baht, less than $90. $200,000, gone. 14 months of marriage, gone. My retirement security, gone. My emergency fund, gone. My trust, gone. Everything I'd transferred to Thailand to start my new life had been systematically extracted from our joint account over the course of 14 months, and I'd helped her do it every step of the way. I printed the bank statements and sat at the kitchen table, going through every withdrawal, every transfer, every expense. The pattern was clear once I bothered to look. Large withdrawals every week, always in round numbers. 10,000 baht, 15,000 baht, 25,000 baht, sometimes twice in one day from different ATM locations. No grocery receipts, no utility bills, no legitimate household expenses, just cash withdrawals and wire transfers to accounts I'd never heard of for people I'd never met. Nanika came home that evening and found me with the bank statements spread across the table like evidence in a criminal trial. She looked at the papers, then at me, then back at the papers. Vincent, she started, but I held up my hand to stop her. Where is it? I asked. $200,000. Where did it go? She sat down across from me, and for the first time since I'd known her, she didn't try to explain or justify or spin a story about family emergencies. She just sat there, looking tired and resigned and maybe a little relieved that the game was finally over. Invested, she said quietly. Bangkok condo, ploy education, family business. I picked up the bank statement showing the largest withdrawal. 50,000 baht, taken out in cash the day after I'd transferred money from my U.S. pension account. This was for family business? She nodded. What kind of family business requires 50,000 baht in cash? Car, she said. Sutat need car for work. I picked up another statement. 40,000 baht, withdrawn the same day she'd told me about her mother's medical emergency. And this was for your mother's medical bills? She nodded again. Yes, surgery very expensive in Thailand. Your mother died 3 years ago, I said. You told me that the day we met. The lie hung in the air between us like smoke. She didn't deny it, didn't try to explain, just sat there with her hands folded in her lap, waiting for me to finish putting the pieces together. How long? I asked. How long have you been planning this? She looked up at me then, and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Not shame, not guilt, but something colder. Something calculating. Since the beginning, she said simply. Since visa office. The next morning she was gone. No fight, no dramatic confrontation, no explanations or apologies. Just an empty closet and a note on the kitchen counter. Don't try to contact me. Better for both of us. Take care of yourself, Vincent. That was it. 14 months of marriage reduced to 3 sentences and a signature. I sat in our empty house for 3 days, not eating, not sleeping, just trying to understand how I'd been so completely, utterly wrong about everything. The woman I'd married didn't exist. The gentle, traditional Thai wife who wanted to take care of me forever was a character she'd played, a role she'd perfected over years of practice with other lonely Western men. The real Nanika was a professional, a specialist in reading desperate middle-aged foreigners and giving them exactly what they needed to feel valuable, needed, loved. She'd studied me like a textbook, identified my weaknesses, and exploited them with surgical precision. My loneliness after the divorce, my desire to feel useful and protective, my need to believe I was special, chosen, worthy of genuine affection. She'd given me a temple wedding because I needed to feel like our relationship was sacred. She'd introduced me to her family because I needed to feel accepted and included. She'd asked for my help with family emergencies because I needed to feel needed, important, like a provider and protector. Every manipulation had been designed to feed my ego while draining my bank account. 2 weeks later, I got a call from my bank in Kansas City. Someone had tried to access my pension account using my Thai address and Nanika's name as an authorized contact. The bank had blocked the attempt and frozen the account pending verification. "Sir," the customer service representative said, "did you authorize a Nanika Sukhothai to manage your retirement funds?" I hadn't. But apparently, I'd signed documents that gave her power of attorney over my financial accounts in case of emergency. Documents I barely remembered signing, mixed in with visa renewals and marriage paperwork and joint bank account applications. She'd been planning to take everything. Not just the money I'd voluntarily transferred to Thailand, but my pension, my social security, my entire financial future. If the bank hadn't flagged the suspicious activity, she would have succeeded. I would have been completely, utterly ruined. I canceled my visa extension and bought a one-way ticket back to Kansas City, not because I hated Thailand, but because I couldn't stay in the house we'd shared, couldn't walk down the street where we'd held hands, couldn't go to the temple where we'd been married without feeling like a fool, a mark, a victim. The flight back to the States gave me 14 hours to think about what I'd lost and what I'd learned. The money was gone, probably forever. Thai police weren't interested in investigating what they considered a civil matter between married couple, and tracking down $200,000 that had been withdrawn in cash over more than a year was impossible. But the money, devastating as it was, wasn't the worst part. The worst part was realizing that I'd been so hungry for love, so desperate to feel valued and wanted, that I'd ignored every warning sign, every red flag, every moment when my instincts told me something wasn't right. I'd wanted to believe in the fantasy so badly that I'd helped create it, funded it, and defended it even when the evidence of my own stupidity was literally spread out on the kitchen table. I lost $200,000 in 14 months of my life to a woman who never loved me, never cared about me, never saw me as anything more than a particularly profitable mark. But I also learned something about myself that I needed to learn, even if the tuition was more expensive than I could afford. I learned that desperation makes you stupid. Loneliness makes you gullible, and the desire to be needed can turn you into exactly the kind of person who gets used by people who specialize in using desperate, lonely people. Back in Kansas City, I moved into a small apartment near my old neighborhood and started over again. No joint bank accounts this time. No quick decisions based on feelings. No confusing gratitude for love or manipulation for partnership. Just me, learning to be alone without being lonely, learning to value myself without needing someone else to validate my worth. Sometimes I get messages on Facebook from other expats in Thailand, men who've heard my story and want to share theirs. The details are different, but the pattern is always the same. The visa help, the quick romance, the joint bank accounts, the family emergencies, the gradual realization that love was never part of the equation. We were all looking for the same thing, and we all found women who specialized in giving us exactly what we needed to feel special, while they systematically emptied our bank accounts. I don't hate Nanika. I understand her. She was running a business, and I was a customer. She provided a service, loneliness, relief, and ego validation, and I paid for it. The price was higher than I expected, but I got what I paid for. The fantasy of being loved and needed and valued by a beautiful woman who would take care of me forever. The fantasy was worth exactly $200,000 and 14 months of my life. Whether that was a fair price depends on how much you think dreams cost and how much you're willing to pay for the privilege of believing in them. I'm 60 now, 3 years older, and considerably poorer but maybe a little wiser. I still eat Thai food sometimes, and I still remember the sound of temple bells on Sunday morning. But I remember other things too. The sound of my bank account balance dropping toward zero. The feeling of finding those real estate contracts and realizing I'd been living with a stranger. The hollow echo of an empty house after someone you loved never really existed disappears forever. That's the real cost of my Thai marriage. Not just the money, though God knows that hurts, but the knowledge that I'd been so desperate to feel loved that I'd convinced myself a business transaction was a romance. So desperate to feel needed that I'd mistaken professional manipulation for genuine affection. The temple wedding was real. The monks were real. The white dress and the incense and the promises were real. But the marriage was just paperwork, and the love was just a performance, and I was just another lonely Western man who confused gratitude for genuine emotion. $200,000 to learn that lesson. Some people might say it was worth it. I'm still not sure,